Board meeting of December 17th. We started with an executive session at 5:30, so join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag and to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the executive committee meeting had discussed some legal issues, some factual issues, and there are no motions coming out of that meeting. So first start off the warrants.
I have the general warrants, Bill,
Thank you.
and the general warrants dated 12/17/18 for the amount of $267,327.24. St. Albans Police was the biggest piece of that at $168,585, followed by Cross Consulting. That's all gone under their relocation. And so that's 21,329, and Cargill Salt was 15,657. That's 77% of the total money we expended. The thing there, in there was 38 single invoices for legal.
Yes.
And 35 of them were at $60 each, one at 45 and one at 30.
Yes.
I understand that's been taken care of now. It's gonna come in as one invoice.
That's the bill, right?
That was, I think, delinquent tax collector.
That was for,
Yes.
but it's, and that total was 2205,
It isn't?
those 38.
Okay, I'll let her know.
But
Thank you.
I think it generated, when I
No,
talked to
it's-
Ann, around $89,000 people paid in, so.
Correct. Yep. It's a necessary
It was
process.
a necessary,
But it did take up a whole page.
it took up, yes, more than a whole page,
Yeah.
page and a half. So I believe everything's in order there, Bill, if you
Okay.
make a motion.
Are there any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a slew of warrants, I counted 5 or 6 of them. I have a fire department warrant to come out of their, it's a fire department reserve, and it's related to installing that camera that we had talked about on the
Yes.
new boat.
Right.
And that's for the amount of $4,971.40. I'll make a motion that we approve that.
Okay.
You wanna do them all in one shot?
You should do them separately, Brendan.
Right.
Okay, so
I'll
any
make a-
questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, I have an impact fee account warrant for $1,106.77, and that's to pay the consultant for meeting with us and meeting prep for introducing us to the impact fee study. So I'll
Okay.
make a motion that we approve that.
Okay. Question, comment, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 And I have the industrial park warrant. It's a more normal number, and I guess we haven't been invoiced for any pump station issues. It's $610.44, and that's all to Green Mountain Power for electricity to run the pumps and the sign lights. So I'll make a motion we approve that.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying
Aye.
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 Thank you.
And then payroll, also, need to pay our good people. I have warrants dated for December 7th and December 14th. The December 7th warrant is for $38,513.04. Carrie, do you want to elaborate why that's more?
Sure.
Double.
We paid on-call pay for our DPW, we paid the insurance cash in lieu of payments, there's 3 of those, and 2 vacation buybacks. So,
Okay.
our general payroll is, in the low teens normally, but, and though, after all that, you also paid $12,000 in taxes.
Right.
Adds up.
So we've got, the December 14th warrant is a bit more normal for us. It's $18,341.18. So I'll make a motion we approve both of the payroll warrants.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now,
I'll move that we approve as written the December 3rd, 2018, and the December 10th, 2018 minutes as written.
Okay.
Yay!
Any questions or comments on any of those? Okay, all those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you. Okay, our next item is Representative Lynn Dickinson. Lynn has decided to give us some time and update us on a few pending issues.
In 10 minutes or less.
You said it, not me.
Well, I don't know about that. No, I came here, thank you for having me tonight. I came here to just sort of give you a heads up on some issues that I think are likely to come up in the legislative session this year, based on the things that we did last year and also some of the things that you hear going on. One of them is Act 250 had a 50-year anniversary committee that met for about 18 months, and they're coming out with their report, I think, in the next few weeks. There are some indications of what they're trying to do. They were looking at the future of Act 250 compared to what we've had in the past and try to see where we go from here. And I took this out of the Vermont State House. It's a State House Headliners. It's written by Guy Page, but it's a pretty decent summary of some of these things. One of their proposals apparently is going to be add climate change as a criterion for project review and approval. It would be minimize emissions of greenhouse gases and also ensure the design and materials used in development and enable projects to adapt to climate change. Another is to prevent woodland development causing forest fragmentation, which has been an issue in the past and brought up in some legislation, and deals with wildlife, and also trying to make sure that we don't damage our forests, and that's also an issue for climate change. And encourage migration of rural Vermonters into compact urban areas and increase the alignment of Act 250 with the goals of supporting Vermont's settlement pattern of compact centers surrounded by rural countryside. That again is something that they've been working on. We had a bill a couple of years ago that passed that exempted some of the development centers, the designated downtowns and some of those kinds of areas with exemption from some of the criteria, or at least less of an exam of less of a little more lenient enforcement of those because they are in settlement areas. Give Act 250 jurisdiction over development at interstate highway interchanges. Reactivate the executive branch development cabinet established by law in 2012 to ensure climate reduction throughout government, and require municipal and regional plans conformity to the new Act 250. So that will probably come out in January and have a bill that presents this to, well, in the past it would have been Natural Resources and Fish and Wildlife. That's usually where they handle those kinds of things. And that would be an attempt to, as far as I can see, tighten up Act 250, actually not make it more adaptable or more flexible, but that's where they're going. And that may not necessarily make it all into a new piece of legislation, but that's a really pretty big one that they're working on. They've been doing it for almost 2 years.
You mentioned something about, you know, they're now going to cover highway development around highways. Is that the interstate or?
Interchanges.
You know, the interchanges, okay.
Yeah, if you recall, we used to have a thing called scenic corridors back
Yes.
in the 70s when Tim Murphy, I think, was the head of our Act 250 board, local board. And that was an attempt, I think, at that time to not develop interstate exchanges, the interstate areas that we have the exits on. And I'm not sure where that's coming from, but that's something they're looking at apparently. So we'll see what the report actually says and what the legislation develops. But you know, there is an infrastructure feature here that would have an impact. I mean, that's where a lot of development has occurred,
Sure.
because that's where the infrastructure is.
But Lynn, does that just cover the land around the interchange, or are they also taking authority to say how the interchange is to be built? I'm thinking now the roundabout issue versus.
Well, that might be part of it. I don't know yet.
Okay.
We don't know yet, but I know that, I think V-Trans is very much committed. There's a group of people in Montpelier very much committed to the roundabouts.
I know.
Whether the municipality agrees with it or not, that's what they've been doing across the state in different places. I don't know if has anyone been to Bennington, to where the roundabout, it's this convoluted, long, involved,
Too late.
and
I've
it's,
seen the ones down in Montpelier and Morrisville.
I've done that in Morrisville, I've done the Morrisville and the Montpelier ones, but they're fairly small.
Yes.
But the Bennington one is big, and it's like a maze, and they've got a visitor center right in the middle of it.
You get lost, keep looking around.
Yeah, it's
Get into it,
definitely
you can't-
interesting.
Can't get out of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting roundabout, but, so that's what they're doing with that. Then, of course, we
Just the
have,
other comment. They're trying to encourage a population shift from rural to urban.
yes, settlement
Okay.
patterns are what they've been pushing, are designated downtowns, the state designated growth centers. There's state defined neighborhoods. And, it takes time and energy and personnel and know-how and an infrastructure in your community to be able to apply for and get those kinds of things approved. So that's the kind of thing that they're encouraging, and that's where the Act 250 will have the most liberalized way of trying to develop those areas. People who want to put up a house out in 10 acres in Bakersfield may now come under Act 250. They may try to put things in the past that weren't under Act 250. That's what I hear.
10-acre exemption at one time, didn't they?
I'm not sure there will be, that may be one of the things they're looking at. But they're trying to keep people in more compact settlement
So they want to go
areas.
from rural America to tenements, just like we had in cities, and all the attendant problems that they create.
Well, they want
That's an
people,
opinion.
they want people to be able to walk on sidewalks and be able to go to, also they cut down on automobile use. And, like living over the store back in
Right,
the
yeah.
early part of the 20th century. And the other thing that happens is that, you do tear downs. In a lot of urban areas, they do tear downs. Actually Burlington's doing that with the mall, and we're doing it here in St. Albans City with Main Street. They tear down the old and put up something new that's bigger, and so we'll see. People do it with homes in some suburban neighborhoods, and so I don't know, we'll see how that works.
Be interesting to see how the social engineering works.
Yeah.
The driving issue, I'm pretty sure is climate change.
Yes, the driving issue is, most of our greenhouse gases come from automobiles, yeah. But we've been working on that, way back, Ralph Nader went after safety, but the next thing we got was higher mileage, and it's really something we've actually been pretty good at trying to improve, which has in result caused our transportation fund to decline. But never mind. Anyway, the other issue that's coming up, of course, is the marijuana tax and regulate. We did do the liberalization to 1 ounce, and we did have it's basically a decriminalization bill that we did this past year. But the marijuana tax and regulate, which would allow for something, which will definitely come up, I'm sure, somewhere this year. One of the options, we had what they call a big amendment that would have I can't remember the name, but anyway, we had a big amendment last year when we did the marijuana bill that we actually passed, and one of them was to create tax and regulate. And one of the pieces it had in it was that gave the towns the option to create ordinances or things to not have marijuana sold or dealt with in their town. And that's something you may want to think about, because they did that in Colorado, and there's some towns that moved on that, and so they don't have any retail establishments in their communities.
Would that be for all marijuana, recreational and medical?
I don't know about that. It might be both. It may be something you can allow one but not the other. But that would be something that that would be something that I would consider to be a good thing for a community, to be able to make that choice. I really don't support tax and regulate, and I didn't support, the one that we did in 2018, because I think there's too many other things going on there. Not the least of which is we have no field tests and the roadside test. But if they do have that, it might be something a community may want to go and think about as an ordinance. If they don't have it in there, I'm sure somebody's gonna try to put it in there because that's something that gives the community some control. Then, of course, there's paid family leave, which we had last year, and that would add cost to the town for your employees. And then there's the carbon tax, and there's a lot of talk about it, but I don't know how that's gonna sugar off, because some people say they won't do it. But there's a lot of people who want it, so we've been talking about it for a few years now. And that would have an impact on everything we use in the town, with gasoline and fuel and heating.
Not only the town, but personally,
Yeah, it would affect everybody,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Ships.
we'll just have to look at the yellow vest in Paris to
Wow.
see how people react to this, right?
That too. And then last but not least is an issue that you raised when we were all here together as a bunch of candidates. And you talked about what we can do about drugs. And so we really don't just get the poor guys, the street addict, and we really go after the people who are the big dealers. I sat in judiciary the past 2 years, and we heard from a lot of police officers from the state police and the Burlington Police Department, and we didn't have time to go into it, but basically, the police told us there's 3 tiers of drug issues as far as dealing and using. There's tier 1, which are the people who are often the large dealers who are out of state or maybe in state, but have connections with the supply and bring it in. Tier 2 is generally people who are local, like 98% Vermonters, and they are the people who live in the community that the larger dealers sort of partner up with. They move into their apartments, they help the larger dealers find customers, they help transport the marijuana or the drug or the opiates or whatever it is, the illegal drugs, and they're sometimes referred to as enablers. And then there's the third group, which are really the third tier, the street users who are often doing the crimes and just sort of getting by. Sometimes the tier 2 enablers, when they act as mules, they also work with the tier 1 group, because there's a common situation where guns are traded for drugs. You know, people can buy the guns here, transport them to Boston or someplace, they pick up the drugs for the guns and then they bring them back. And we just had a situation similar to that this summer. The Gary Taylor's street crime unit broke up a gun, mule, drug situation with about 5 or 6 people who actually purchased the guns and then brought them down and got the drugs and brought them back. And I think that came out of the street crimes unit investigations. But that's a pretty common thing. A lot of the tier 1 people don't want to come into the state now. You know, they don't want to be on the roads and get stopped with a large amount of drugs, so they use these local people who can be the mules for the drug transportation.
What drugs are you talking about? You know, marijuana, cocaine,
Heroin.
things like that?
Heroin,
But
cocaine.
marijuana would be off the table with this new legislation.
Marijuana
Presumably.
Marijuana is still dealt with in those criminal situations, but it's not going to be as, heroin is the real moneymaker, and cocaine. And there's opiates and all kinds of other things. You name it, they've got all kinds. Fentanyl is a real,
Yeah.
it's a dangerous situation. But anyway, so that's what happens, is that it's the tier 1 people who are the big dealers. They're not really going to come in here for any length of time. It's the local people who really are the operatives, and there's a couple types of them, so you have to be aware of that. The street crimes unit seems to be a really interesting way of, that seems to have been a real impact. Now, buying guns for someone and selling, buying guns for someone else that can't pass the background check, if you can buy them locally and you can pass the background check, that's against the law. That's called a straw man purchase. And so but they pick the people up on that as well.
So what is the aim? To increase penalties?
No,
Punishment or
the
whatever?
the aim in the Judiciary Committee was for justice reform, to try to give people more chances for a second chance. We expanded expungement. We were looking at trying to reduce the amount of criminals and try to find alternatives. We also had there's a lot of different things going on at once.
Is that for tier 3 or all tiers?
Well, this is for anyone who's in the correctional centers and in anybody in the justice system. There's a feeling that we do have more people of color than we have representing in our population, so that's one issue. Some of these people are in there for nonviolent crimes or supposedly can be rehabilitated. And, I mean, we obviously, one of the things I worked on in institutions was to keep the community high school of Vermont in the correctional center, which does provide real opportunity for rehabilitation and jobs. So we worked on a bail bill that was trying to not require money for bail so that you wouldn't be detaining people. And at the same time, we were also facing up with the expungement and with the bail issues. We also had the issue of domestic violence, and there's sometimes at cross purposes. But the drug issue is sort of permeates everything. It permeates all of DCF and all of the CHINS cases and all of the things in the court systems, and it permeates everything in criminal activity. You know, it's just across the board, it's a huge thing. But in terms of trying to pick up only the big dealers, that's harder than it looks.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you guys are interested in?
No, I mean, okay, maybe difficult to pick up the big dealers, but once you have them, you have to make them pay the price. That's, yeah, they're in a situation where it's very, very high reward and very low risk. You would expect where you have a high reward, there's a high risk. And I can tell you from my experiences living overseas, if you were going to play around with any drugs, including things as nebulous as mine as marijuana, the risk reward presumably was not worth it, but some did it. The reward was a lot of money. The risk on being caught tended to be execution.
Yeah.
It was pretty final,
Yeah.
but that still doesn't solve the problem completely.
Yeah.
But you knew what you're in for when and if you got caught. I don't see that happening here somehow.
Well, certainly not in Vermont.
That's what I say. I'm talking right here in Vermont, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real tough. I mean, one of the things that we talked about, of course, was the gun laws about, you know, the background checks. But if you're expunging people's criminal histories in the courts, there's nothing in there to check, even if there had been an incident that would have warranted not having.
And this is both state and federal?
This is state.
Okay, because presumably a lot of these crimes would be on the federal register, and you have to go through the federal background check.
Yes, the federal background check is in the NICS system, and yes, there is a form that all of the people with an FFL, a federal firearms license, has to check before a person purchases the gun. And there's a series of questions, you can look it up, I think it's form 4473 or something like that. And it's pretty comprehensive. The problem with it is, of course, is that there's some error in the entry side. For instance, the guy who shot up the church in Texas had been dishonorably discharged from the Air Force, and nobody entered that into the system, because that's one of the reasons you would be denied, is if you're dishonorably discharged. So, I mean, any use of any drugs, or anybody who's on drugs, including medical marijuana, can be denied. I mean, there's a whole bunch of, if you're a felon, you're denied. So, mentally ill, you know, there's a bunch of questions. It's pretty comprehensive for that. But the drug situation is truly a serious issue. It's a serious issue here in Franklin County. We have some of the highest CHINS cases, that's children in need of supervision, because of parents and family who are just totally wiped out by these drugs. We have some of the highest in the state, even more than Chittenden County. So, you know, you really have to be aware that this is a burden on our judicial system. It's a burden on our DCF, social workers and schools and everything else that is, you know, the healthcare system. It just permeates. So we'll be continuing to do that, I'm sure.
No doubt, yeah.
I do have one question, Bill.
Please, go ahead. Yeah, if anybody any questions, just pipe up.
We had, I don't know if it was this time last year or maybe towards the beginning of last year's session, we had talked about stormwater with the entire delegation. And we had talked about community, you know, we had talked about residential developments where the homeowners had to carry forward stormwater permits, but they were lapsed and a lot of them hadn't been renewed, or a lot of them were pending. And the average homeowner may not even know that there are a storm, you know, but it's not looked at as a title defect. so it's a hard issue. I mean, how do you bring somebody, and we have different neighborhoods and developments all over town that we're working, with help of grant monies to rebuild stormwater infrastructure to meet our MS4 requirements.
Yeah. No.
So my worry is we have new residential developments going in play that may end up in the same predicament down the road. I mean, a lot of these, our staff's been pretty diligent about making sure that by the end we'll have the maintenance deficiencies corrected through MOUs. But I just don't know what the state could do. I don't know, maybe a pending or not active stormwater permit should be an unsaleable title defect. Maybe it needs.
They seem to have lost track of the list of what permits are out there, what the status is, and so on. It kind of disappears somehow.
Right, and we have these goals that we need to achieve for MS4, and we have to expend pretty large amounts of taxpayer dollars. Even with grants, it's all coming from the same pockets. And how do we ensure that we aren't just perpetuating that problem further by not correcting the deficiencies that led us to have what we have now? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I recognize the problem because when I was first running for office, Tanglewood was in here. People from Tanglewood were in here almost every meeting.
Right.
Talking about their issues, and that was the issue, is that these permits, it wasn't just them, it was, Bayview Drive, and they had permits, and it had to be renewed every 5 years or something.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were all private associations, and nobody had ever formed an association, and so it was in a no man's land. And I happened to go to this guy's house on Bayview, and he was the president of the association. He was the new president of the association, and we spent like 3 hours. And it was hard. It was hard for these homeowners, and I think they did have an impact on resale.
Sure.
I mean, it really did have an impact. And there were, the stuff had been sent into by the engineers, who were the ones who were supposed to send the stuff back in. I mean, I think the industrial park even had a problem with Superior Technical being, and you had to start from scratch practically to get the thing resolved. It was very common around the state, and all of these private associations or private roads that had been built in the late 80s and early 90s, almost all of them had an impact on it. I don't know if your road had one, but a lot of the other did.
We keep ours up, but we just have to know
But
about it.
you'd send them in, the engineer, Peter Cross, would send them in apparently, and then they would just sort of go into a black hole somewhere, and it was like, what do you do? And so I think some of them have been resolved. I think they've caught up with some of it, and people have been aware of it, but it is still a problem.
Well, it's a problem. I can speak as a developer. Sometimes if you have a project and you place I place homes, but you build and sell your last home, and then you get to the portion of creating associations and handing it off to homeowners, and a lot of times there's just not any willing party to step forward. I can name, I managed one for over 2 years that when it finally came time to pass the baton, you send letters to maybe 10 households and 1 or 2 people show up, and then it's just not, you have no backbone, you have no whip to crack to guide people into coming to bring their problems.
Well, if I recall, you don't plow, at least in Tanglewood, they wouldn't plow the road. They wouldn't let the school bus down there.
Well,
I mean, it was a safety issue.
We couldn't take over the road.
Right.
Yeah,
Because if we took over the road, we'd become a party to this.
yes,
And we said, until you have your association formed, so we can form an association, until you get the stormwater pond up to snuff.
Mhm.
When that happens, we'll take over the road and we'll share with you, we'll be partners
yeah,
with you.
yeah,
And until that happens, there's no plowing, no school bus, nothing.
yeah, it was a
And
real problem.
And it took a few cases where people just couldn't sell their property, they couldn't get certificates of occupancy, and so
Yeah,
you get enough irate people, then they formed the association. And they're making a lot of progress.
yeah, well, I would hope so,
Yes.
But some of them were more cooperative than others and had an easier time, but I know Tanglewood had a really hard
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
The ridiculous part of this is when you have a formed association, but the stormwater permit's still pending or just not renewed, and they have no permit condition that they're not meeting under Act 250 or the town's sketch plan. There's nothing.
And then, of course, the target keeps moving.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's hard. I know in a lot of other states, I don't know about a lot, but in other states it's a full-blown unsaleable title defect if you don't have that permit, especially in condominium units. I look at Ned because I get half of my information from Ned.
I don't think he's proposing
That's
that.
questionable, but.
I don't know if he's proposing. I don't know what we look at, and I don't know if that's. I don't know what committee that is.
You're gonna have a very interesting and tough year down there this year, I think.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting year.
Right.
Yeah, it's a veto-proof majority, so
Yes.
Phil Scott is gonna have to figure out how to maneuver with people or not. We'll
Or
see.
not, yeah.
When do they assign committees, I should ask?
Usually it's the first day.
Okay, so you
Yeah,
don't
when
know
we go
yet.
in on January 9th, usually, well, the whole time I've been down there, previous to that, I think they did it, they waited. They don't know why they waited, but they did. They did it like the next week.
Mm.
But since, when I went there and Shaf Smith became the speaker, he announced it at his little speech at the
Right.
beginning. And they've done that every year since, so it's, you know where you are right away. Then you can meet, you can actually get something
Get something
done.
going, right?
And your first day is January
January
7th.
9th.
Then on the MS4, some towns are starting some utility fees to all the structures in the village or town. But I also read in the paper, the state of Vermont was trying to put something together to have a MS4 fund utility. And it's just been going around at the state level. Are you aware of anything that's currently going on how to fund
No,
MS4?
they're looking for ways to fund the clean water bill that we passed a few years ago, we were all in. That had an impact. I gave you all the copy of all the fees I gave to Carrie. It was a long list of them.
Long fees for us to pay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and developers and everybody. There was a whole bunch of people who had to pay, farmers. But municipalities have a lot of responsibilities with your roads and everything else, which you've been dealing with obviously now for a few years. But there is no big source, big fund. I've come to the conclusion there is no big fund out there to fund the clean water bill. The MS4 communities are in a much more aggressive stage of trying to deal with these things because you have the lake and most of the people near the Lake Champlain area are dealing with it all the time. Essex and city and the town and a lot of the other units here. They have to put together something that will help defray the cost of this clean water. Maybe with smaller things, they are bonding it. Stormwater utilities is a really, that's the non-point pollution that they're always talking about that needs to be addressed. And South Burlington has a stormwater utility. They've had it for, 5, 6, 8 years, something like that. And more towns are looking into that. We did pass a bill a couple of years ago that would allow communities together to form it in an area so it's not just one town. You can, let's say, partner with Swanton, St. Albans Town and Georgia and create a district for yourself that's your own district. And it wouldn't have to be it would give some governance structure to that. But yeah, stormwater utilities is gonna be probably something you're gonna see more and more places do across the state. It's gonna make sense, cause it's a way to address.
I just have problems when the state mandates something to a town, then they don't fund it. But they mandate it and it's terribly expensive.
Yeah, well, they do it all the time. It's,
So what kind of hammer do you have if I don't follow it?
well, they will have hammers that they will use, but I'm not sure what there's lots of bills we've passed that don't make any sense and that don't even get enforced. And the only enforcement can come with a complaint. And a lot of the water stuff that we've done has been that kind of an enforcement vehicle. So, it just came from the co-op meeting where they basically said, don't do no harm. Don't just pass legislation just to pass legislation. And that's a really good point. But the water situation is something that really does need to be addressed. And so a stormwater utility or a stormwater fee or a parcel fee, or I don't know what they're gonna come up with. You know, I've had bills in there that ask to take the money from the Vermont Housing Conservation Fund and take the conservation money where they conserve land and use that money for the next 20 years, which comes to $6 million a year, and use that toward helping with the water cleanup and to defray some of these costs and create a source of revenue. It's not a lot of money. You're not going to fix anything with $6 million, but you can use it to help pay off the bonds, because one of the things we're doing is we're using the bonding authority of the state to get money to do some of these things. It's not a lot of money, but it's a bigger bundle to take. And you could use the $6 million to help defray the bond. And we've been doing that for a couple of years. And but I'm not sure that we have a big, huge source of money that we can just use. And one of the things I discovered when
I don't either.
yeah, I mean, one of the things that we discovered that the JFO, the Joint Fiscal Office, showed us when I proposed this bill a couple of years ago, was that we've been taking the money out of the this Vermont Housing Conservation Fund, which is, you know, a big pot of money, and we've been using it, putting it into the general fund for just the regular operation of the state government. And, you know, sometimes it's a little amount, sometimes a big amount. And, you know, if you're doing that anyway, you may as well go and apply it to this clean water bill. That's existing money you're already using. And put it to something where it really, you say, is a priority. So I'm gonna reintroduce that again, so we'll see.
What about the Champ license plates?
That's another option. There's all, but you know, I even looked at a couple of options that apparently raise a lot of money in Maryland. And they put out, and this is common across the country, there's a 5-cent tax on paper bags. You know, plastic bags, not the paper, plastic bags. Yeah, they have them all over the place. But apparently, this was to help the Lake Chesapeake Bay in Maryland. And it raised a ton of money. But, you know, they have 100 times more people in Montgomery County near Washington, D.C. than we have here. And I talked to a couple of people about it. It would raise maybe $2 or $3 million, which seems like, you know, why bother? But you're probably going to have to find little things like that. The problem with the bill that, with that kind of bill, is that most people hardly ever use those plastic bags anymore. They bring their own bags. It's like the tobacco tax or the gasoline tax. You know, people find a way to conserve gas, and the transportation fund goes down. And you know, if you're not using the plastic bags, you don't want to pay the nickel. It's got a diminishing return, you know.
Well, the question is the objective to raise money, or is it to improve the environment?
Well, the goal is to improve the environment.
So
It's to
you
take
reach the
care of.
goal, it's all going to cost you money, right?
Yeah. The goal is, of course, to kind of get some money to help the towns and the developers and the industries and the, you know, municipalities that are, a lot of them are the older cities and municipalities are all paved over, and it's going to take them a lot of money to deal with that. And we have land we can use.
Well, if the Act 250 changes occur.
Well,
Well, Act
Yeah.
250 had its way, you have more land, because everybody's going off the land into the cities.
I'm not saying it makes any sense. A lot of times it's across purposes.
Right.
Why should legislation make sense? Come on, man.
I get, when, in terms of, I know Carrie's watching the clock.
Oh,
From my point of view, going back to the original, the drug issue, I think only tier 3 is where rehabilitation should be put. The tier 1 and 2 should go to jail and
Yeah.
languish.
Yeah.
But the kid on the street that gets caught up in drugs, that's the person who doesn't need a criminal record, needs the help,
Yeah.
and get back into the mainstream.
Yeah. And the counseling piece is an important piece of that. We had the judge from Grand Isle,
I know who you mean,
Yeah.
retired judge.
the retired judge, who talked about he testified.
yeah.
And he worked with Spectrum, with Annie Reminiscenu, who worked with them, and he would get people into her program like that afternoon.
Right.
And that's the kind of immediate help people need. But again, that's a strain on our mental health system. I mean, our mental health system is already under strain. But the counseling, LAPDs, the people that are in the ability to be able to help out, there's just not enough of them. And
Yeah,
You know.
I'd say, I agree with Ali, help the victims, punish the victimizer.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
That's it.
well, yeah, it's,
Yeah, you heard that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Lynn.
Well,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you, Lynn.
for coming down.
Yeah.
Don't be a stranger, come through.
No, I will come
Good
back.
session.
Yes.
Tell us the good news. Right.
You know, there might not be.
Thank you.
You gotta hope, right?
Aretha Franklin, say a little prayer for you.
Rule about no matter about water cleaning up the lake.
What would I do?
Okay.
Starting to get hold of the.
Unified Development Bylaws. Who's gonna lead the show on this?
Oh, Ned's gonna lead the show on this. He's been working with the planning commission on this, and with Becky, our zoning administrator. She had been retaining a file since we last updated them to make sure we corrected as much as we could in this.
Now, the document we have, what is this?
This is the updated, like, actually, let me step to one side for a second. This is what used to be called the first reading of a new ordinance. So we have several meetings over the next 2 months or so planned out for specific guidelines to meet the state law on hearings for this. But this is the revised Unified Development Bylaws with all the corrections Becky had been accumulating over the last couple of years to take into account for those, to account for new state law, to account for some zoning change, to account for the updated town plan, and several other things. Everything is in there. If you go through it, there are sections highlighted in yellow or in red text, and frankly, there may even be some blue text still in there from some stuff we edited in and we're rearranging, but anything that's in color or highlighted has been changed from the prior editions.
And you recently had the comments, they have the comments from regional planning as well?
Yes, and we've made the additions that regional planning asked for, and they're in the additions that you have in your packet. They made some various things.
How did you find those recommendations? No.
They were
Helpful or not?
helpful. And I'm gonna leave it as they were helpful.
Okay.
Well, there's one section they talk about, some section 606 does not clearly specify the thresholds and conditions for an administrative minor amendment. I didn't find those spelled out here.
They are,
Tell me where.
that's 606, I forget what page that is off the top of my head, but it's, if you look at, and I know Becky and I were making some last minute adjustments to just that piece. The 606.
606 is 48.
48. The planning commission came up with a good idea to basically do it as what we were calling the 10% and 1,000 square feet rule, where it would be, if you were doing, a permit, a minor adjustment to your permit, minor amendment, excuse me, and the estimated cost for that change would be 10% or less of the assessed valuation, or the impact would be to 1,000 square feet of the structure, or expanded by 1,000 square feet. Then that's
The assessed valuation, meaning what it is on our tax rolls.
our
Our
tax
grand list, right?
Yeah, our tax list, yes.
Because there was something further on about substantial changes, and
Oh,
that one.
that one I think was 890 something or other, and that one I'll find it just in a second. That was, well, we rephrased that after saying that it would be a substantial structural change.
Yeah, that was this 50% of the assessed value.
Yes.
That's in the definition
Yeah,
somewhere, yes.
Yeah, and we use that phrase unintentionally, and RPC's catching that phrase, although we used it in an innocent manner, not as a defined term. We did rearrange that one so that it would not be using a defined term. Actually, that may have been 804. Let me just see that for a second.
Yeah, in fact, one thing that confused me
I've been through this so many times now, I'm picturing some of these as,
is over
yeah.
there, anyway.
Well, that one we did rephrase to accommodate
What number
NRPC.
is it?
I was gonna say 804, but it could have been, let me just get to the right one right away. Yeah, 904 is the marinas, it's not that one, it is,
Well, actually, one other small point, and you referred to St. Albans bicycle and pedestrian master plan and ordinance. What ordinance do we have?
where's that should have been, what page is that?
I'm looking at page 56,
56?
803, 2H1. You use bicycle, master plan and ordinance, it's used several times.
I will make sure that those, it shouldn't say ordinance, those
Yeah.
are supposed to be removed.
What I was getting at earlier was on page 102 on definitions, you have substantial improvements as a defined term. And you use the term costing 50% or more of the market value minus depreciation of the structure itself. Now that's,
That's a-
market value and assessed value are two different things.
Correct. Those are from the FEMA guidelines, and we're forced to follow their verbiage, and that's straight out of the FEMA guidelines.
It doesn't make sense, but anyway.
Yeah, it's FEMA.
Well, I mean, but you're gonna, somebody's gonna have to do something, get a market value, get an assessment made. Yeah, that's. But rather than spend a lot of time here, I have a whole load of written comments, questions and so on, which I'll give you, and sometimes there are duplications of definitions and whatnot, you need definitions.
Okay.
So I don't want to be here all night with you. I know you want to get home before the snow gets too heavy.
No, that's a problem.
Okay.
No matter how heavy it gets, I will stay.
Wasn't it just updated a year ago, maybe?
Oh, we did a few minor corrections about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
But this is a major revision.
Not many changes really for major revisions.
Well,
Nothing substantive.
nothing, yeah. The biggest change was really to the zoning map, was the rezoning of the Everett property.
What's that zoned as now?
It's zoned as, I believe it was industrial, and it's gonna be commercial. And basically, it just takes the commercial zone that's essentially surrounding it and moving it out to cover that area. And the zoning boundaries, rather than cutting across the back end and
Yeah.
lower to, it'll follow existing lot lines.
Okay.
So there's no splitting lots and stuff like that. And that was at the request of the current owners of that
Yes,
property.
okay.
And we'll be putting out in the next by the end of the week, we'll be putting a notice in the paper that has a list of all of the subsections that have some change in them, so that if people wanna come down to town hall or go to the website and get a copy, they will know via the notice what sections. It'll basically say, you know, let's just, as an example, 102 made a change, 103 no change, things like that. It'll just list them all out.
This wasn't meant to be a substantial overhaul, it was just to correct some of the deficiencies
Yeah.
from the last.
And one small point, on all your specific uses, so on,
Uh-huh.
on the first page, you list all the zones across the top, and the uses go down. But every subsequent page, they're not listed, so you have to keep going from. I would suggest you have a heading on each one of those, so you know what each column represents.
You have found one of the problems underlying this whole entire document is that there are formatting issues throughout here. 'Cause
Well, I can
it's-
see they're down the bottom instead of the top.
Yeah, no, they're just, once we get to the final edition, we're gonna need to
Okay,
take the text out of what it is, get rid of all the formatting, and format it so it's correctly, because there's a whole bunch of places where you can't see it here in the text, but there's, you know, dozens of spaces to shove stuff over just because it wouldn't move over. It's just like, oh, we have to stuff it over so that people can read it. So we'll fix it later on.
I have one question. You have, on the state highway, are those highways maintained exclusively by the AOT? Are there anywhere we have joint
I
No,
don't believe so.
maintenance, so on?
no.
Like 38, Lower Newton, part of that state, part of it's not, I don't know.
Yeah, they leave off, just before Dunsmore,
Yeah.
and then we pick it up.
All right.
They don't share well.
Yeah, okay, so there's no overlaps.
Yeah, there's no-
I'll cross that off. Okay. Maybe I'll just give it to you and you can take a look at it.
Happy to take a look at it.
So we'll have we're planning another reading on this in January 7th.
January 7th is our next one,
Okay.
and then we have another one on the, on the February 4th.
And then it's adopted.
And that's the final public hearing.
Nothing out here is substantive, so it's more
Yeah, it's,
whatever.
it's,
Just to get all our ducks in a row.
yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other questions? Ned? You want to just briefly update us on the Better Connection Grant sidewalk study?
Better Connection Grant Study that's the bicycle and pedestrian study running north along North Main Street and Route 7 up towards Walmart. We are a week or so from the end of the study. The consultant's putting together the final sets of plans, the final document, and I'm sort of surprised they didn't have it. He had said he'd have it to me by this afternoon, and it's not this afternoon anymore, and it's not here, so it's running a little late. But they've had one of the consultants has had some sick children, so they've been having some issues trying to get them back up to speed and some other stuff. But it's going to be a planning study that'll show what's possible along that corridor, whether you could put bicycle and pedestrian on one side, on both sides, mix it up so it sort of puts everything out there and comes up with some, excuse me, some basically gross price estimates on how much things will cost to do the whole thing or parts of it. So it's a great study, and it follows the guidelines that V-Trans and Federal Highway have put out if we want to go for a future grant, which I'm hoping we do, to implement and construct some of those things. So this is our first mandatory step, and then there'll be one other mandatory step, and then we can start moving dirt and doing something.
If we follow all these rules and apply for money, how much does the federal government grant in terms of match relationships?
And depending on what funding we go after, it's either 80 cents on the dollar that they'll give us or 90 cents on the dollar that they'll give us. So it's either way.
That's pretty substantial.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's nice. If not.
Very interested to see what the final proposals for a parking area for the rail trail might look like.
They've come up with several issues. The one big issue that needs to be overcome in that one area is because that area is part of the rail banking system, the rail trail, obviously. And I want to say, can't use some of that rail banked land for road purposes. Now, I know that's not completely true. I know other communities have done that. You need to get go up and kiss the ring and get the federal government to permit you to have a special case, and we'll have to go through that. That's difficult, mind-numbing, but not impossible to overcome. But the one that I've seen most recently is to bring it in where the rail trail actually exits onto North Main Street right there, is bring the road to that position so that it comes in and makes a a specific 90-degree angle T intersection, so that you can line things up and people can stop and look, and then traffic coming along Route 7 can no longer shoot up, at breakneck speeds. That would be.
You're talking now, right behind that, you have Maple City Diner?
Yeah, right behind their parking lot, using
Okay.
that, where the rail trail actually hits
Right.
the road. Yeah, using that as the road and pushing the rail trail to a slightly different location.
Now, I've also heard talk of bringing the, some sort of bike path or some walking path from Hardack down to Seymour Road.
Yes,
In terms of all this planning and changing of roads, how would you get down 105 from wherever that path can come in?
that's actually been part of a lot of different stuff, and it is part of this study also, because the rail trail is only, a couple of 100 feet up from Route 7 right there. But really, that would be probably, and my guess is, take it as no more than a guess, it would be sidewalks on one side and wider shoulders, slightly wider shoulders on both sides, so that you have cyclists sharing the road with cars and walkers on the sidewalk.
Which road are you talking about, 105?
Yeah,
From the Admiral's house down?
Good luck.
it's a tight fit, yeah, that's why some of those shoulders are gonna be maybe getting a foot or two wider and no more. There's also some.
Alan's gonna get a heart attack, which,
well,
no, that's a state road, I don't have to worry about it.
That's right. And certainly, we can, depending on how much it costs and what the community's up for, is bury some of those drainage ditches, is use that position on the road as either shoulder or sidewalk, excuse me. So it's difficult, but it's possible. It would help us with our MS4 if we could contain some of that drainage.
We had two ladies here 2 weeks ago, and they wanted to make the ditches smaller to put a path in, and Alan said, no, we're making them larger, and now you're burying them. I don't think it's gonna work.
Well,
It's gonna go all underwater.
There have to be some compromises.
yeah,
Something's not right here.
well, thankfully, that was Moquam Shore, not that road, so we're at least lucky in that part.
We're looking at other options to
Yeah.
get from that one point to the other, actually, some other right-of-ways.
And certainly we can cut across and do some other stuff, so it's not the end of the world, and it's not impossible, it's just time consuming and relatively expensive. And there actually is, I bike through that neighborhood quite frequently. I come up High Street and come out and then come down 105 and hit the rail trail and go up. There's a fair number of people who walk along and bike along High Street and then come down that road. High Street's okay, it's not bad. Traffic's only slow enough and there's enough stop signs so that's metering out the traffic. But once you get out to 105, there's some substantial trucks and it's narrow and.
You have to be quick.
Yeah, you've got to get down there. I'm an experienced cyclist, excuse me, and even some of the big trucks out there coming down to that intersection at Route 7, They come into that intersection at a good clip.
So we should be expecting a report soon, and are there any other public meetings to tell the public about?
We had not planned on any, but we will certainly have some sort of a public, a public meeting of some sort to present the whole thing sometime, probably in the January, February timeframe, where we can get everything together, get everyone up. Well, probably because we had the first one down here in Town Hall, we'll probably have the next one somewhere up, either at the library, at Collins Pearly, or at City Hall.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Ned, thank you very much. Joanne, are we live?
Supposedly,
So we have so we can have people call in if they wish?
I think so.
Be my guest. Right, thank you.
Public comments coming up.
Okay.
Members report.
So we have two things fairly short. The DPW relocation update is that we did present to the Development Review Board last week. It went well. I have reason to believe that we're going to get a permit. Have not received it in hand yet, but and we're processing. Our design team has worked out all of the specifications details, and we are expecting to go out to bid this week. When somebody calls in, we kind of treat it just like they're in the audience, and they can speak when you guys are
I'm sorry, can
Sure.
you say that again?
speaking.
Number is 524-2415, is that correct?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay,
So the bids were originally planned to go out tomorrow.
okay, can you hold a moment?
They in fact are gonna be going out, I believe, Thursday evening into Friday. And Matt Young will be issuing those bids out shortly, and then we're expecting people to have the bids back in by mid-January.
Good.
So we're still fairly on track on that goal. And we're pushing forward with meeting with V-Trans on the salt shed grant. We have a new representative. The person we met with last month has been changed to a new representative from V-Trans, both named Scott, actually. So it'll be easy to remember, but we're meeting with them this week. And we should have some renderings from our design team fairly soon. Those are the 3D pictures that we all desperately seek to just kind of picture what this process looks like, what the project looks like. So we're working on that so that we can begin our public outreach in January to explain to people what our DPW project is. Need, cost, and any details they want. They can call me obviously beforehand, but, so that's our plan for next month.
You have a call?
Yeah, there's a gentleman on the phone,
Okay.
John Bushy, who has a question about the fire department boat.
We're not in that.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Bushy.
Hello,
Hi.
hi, I'm calling because there's talk about purchasing a boat for the town. And I was just wondering about that. You know, I look at the town fire department just got a new boat. We have the sheriff's department that has the boat. Also, we have the Coast Guard has the boat. Also, the state police has the boat. I'm just wondering, what is the need to go out and spend money for a boat?
Are you talking about the proposed police department boat?
Yes.
Okay.
We haven't actually decided on that yet. They're presenting at our budget meetings next month.
And it
Now,
Can you hear?
Is that something that the town would be purchasing, that boat?
well, I think that's the proposal, and I have to emphasize it's a proposal, and some of the, some of the questions you have, members of the select board have as well, and we're gonna hear more and more about that as we go forward with our budget hearings.
Right. So this, I don't quite understand, so the boat, if it was to be purchased or to be used for the police, is that something that the town would be purchasing that boat?
Yes.
Yeah, my understanding is
We did.
the proposal, off the top of my head, is for $150,000 for a boat to be purchased by the town to be used for police activities in and around St. Albans. That's the proposal.
Right. Well, as I say, I'm just wondering, with all these boats, the sheriff's department, the state police, and the town, I realize the town tries on, that's simple. But, I'm just wondering, that's all the money, and of course, you got a lot of taxpayers here, they're on fixed income, and there's only so much in paying for taxes. But that's the only comment I had for tonight.
Okay.
And I thank you for hearing me out, and you all have a nice holiday,
Okay,
Thanks for
you
calling,
too,
Sarah.
Chris. Have a very nice holiday. Thanks for expressing your concern. You're the first caller with this new system. Thank you very much, Mr. Bush. We appreciate
I'm
it.
so excited to get a call. So that basically wraps up the DPW. I don't know if you have any questions or if I missed any high points, but we're pushing forward with that. Nothing? I'll move on. Oh.
I guess that's such a great.
No, it's fine. It's
Good, how are you? Something separate? Well, we're just finishing up the town manager report. Do you want to hold, or, we've got public comment coming up shortly.
Is it David
Okay,
winning?
can
I
you
think
hold on a
it is.
moment? Thanks. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
He's gonna wait for Karen.
So the second item is our health path update. As I reported, I believe a few weeks ago, we went out to bid for some design service coordination, I guess I'll call it. And we got two bids in, did award that bid to Stantec, and I like their approach to this. They actually cite some successful grant awards and are pushing us to meet initially with V-Trans, which I think is a good start. So we're gonna start that work here very shortly in preparation for grant season. So that project moves forward. And the prices were very reasonable, it was under, I think, 3 at this point. So that's reasonable considering they understand that we have a lot of data we wanna utilize, not that we need a whole lot of studying of more, so.
Okay, I was a little surprised to see that they're talking about a 3-way motor vehicle intersection on the state town Sasset Highway. I didn't realize there were going to be motor vehicles entering there. And I'm glad they're going to look at safety issues, because as you know, that's my main concern.
Yes.
Ready to talk to David?
I'm ready to talk to David anytime. I saw him
No,
today at the senior
Another
center.
question, Bill, on
Sure.
that, the CTAC, or the St. Albans Town Highway.
Yes.
I think Al brought it up about where are we of having a traffic light at the bottom of Route 7.
I'm working with the chief of police. I've got the data. I just need some time now to write a letter and then start getting people to send endorsements to that application or that request.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah, and I'll hopefully have it done by the end of January.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. McWilliams.
David?
David,
Yeah,
go ahead.
You're on.
to the town select board, one of the things that's happening throughout Franklin County and is happening in St. Albans Town, I've already talked to Carrie about it, is that the Humane Society here will not accept any of our dogs. The Burlington Humane Society, I've called them and they will not accept. I've called the Morrisville Humane Society and they're not accepting. So basically, a lot of these towns, including us, are in a predicament where I've held a dog for 10 to 15 days trying to find a home for it, and lucky I've been able to find a home for it with the help of the town manager and AJ and Jen putting pictures on Facebook. And also we're having a problem where veterinarians do not want to put animals to sleep. So it's basically putting in any of the towns, like the town of St. Albans, in a predicament where, if we pick up an animal, we don't find an owner. What are we going to do with it if the veterinarians don't want to, put it down, or if the Humane Society do not want to accept it? That's a major dilemma. I think the select board should get the Franklin County Animal Rescue in, and we have a little discussion with them and see if they will accept our animals, and then turn, back in the previous years, we used to give them so much money. and they would take care of the animal. We also pay them boarding fee and stuff like that. But right now, a lot of towns, including this town of Going, coming into the new year, we're going to be spending a lot more money on euthanasia if I have to find a vet outside of Franklin County. And the euthanasia cost is about $100 per dog, and then it goes on the weight of the dog. We're going to be talking about a lot more money. And I think we've got to try to open that communication with the Humane Society, or try to find out a solution where we're going to have more money in our budget.
Al, you want to make a comment?
My advice would be your animal control officer from St. Albans Town.
Al has a question.
David, what about is there any way that we could work with other communities neighboring, like Georgia and Swanton and Fairfield? They're in the same dilemma, aren't they?
Georgia does not have, is in the same predicament, because I work as their animal control officer in the town of Georgia. St. Albans City was taking them down to Colchester, but, I've heard that, a lot of the towns, including Swanton and Sheldon, are having problems finding homes for these animals when the Humane Society does not accept them as they accepted them for 10 to 15 years prior to, this, what we're in a predicament now. And, I'm not going to go out and start shooting dogs, because it's not in my, being of loving animals to do that. The only other solution is euthanasia, which is very costly, and I think we need to get that rescue in from Franklin County and to see what we can do to straighten this mess out. Because if we don't, then you're going to have a hard time keeping them patrol officers that are, pick up these dogs, and we don't find homes for them, even though we advertise on Facebook and stuff like that. So I think we got to come up with a solution. We got Matt, our new animal control officer, that works for me, and I don't want to lose him, because, the fact that if we have to start euthanizing animals, and our kennel person doesn't want animals euthanized, so we got to find a solution for this for the year 2019. So I'd appreciate your support. I'll get off the phone.
Wait, before you get off, David, before you get off the phone, this meeting that you're proposing, instead of just the St. Albans Town Select Board, should we not have representatives of the other communities in the same problem, with the same problem? All sitting down together with the Humane Society.
Did you hear that, David?
He's listening to the TV.
They've already proposed that.
Oh, have they? Okay.
It's too bad the leagues of cities. It's too bad the leagues of cities and towns wouldn't coordinate this, because it's a problem in every town about euthanizing animals and finding a place. The town of St. Albans does not have a boarding place to board animals other than Carrie Lewis, and if we start taking dogs from that are not found owners for, and we start euthanizing them, I think she will probably give up her contract, because she doesn't want to see animals euthanized. Neither do I, unless they're sick or injured or in bad shape.
So we were contacted by a potential, he wasn't president yet, a new president of the FCAR, Franklin County Area Rescue. They are, I've heard, going out to area towns to encourage participation in hopes that their new goals, and to Bill's point, and Bill and I talked about it, they don't necessarily have them all written down yet, but their goal is to explain where they're going and then hold a joint meeting with a lot of municipalities in Franklin County to try to brainstorm a resolution. They know that we would like them to provide this service. They want it to be viable, we want it to be viable, but they just lacked a real clear direction for a little while. They want to help animals, but after that, I think it was a little confusing for them. So that was their plan a month ago.
And they had to get themselves reorganized and
Yes.
take a look at the financial impact on this thing. And in the past, we had to pay for these services, and no doubt we'll have to pay in the future.
Correct.
It's just a question of what needs to be done and how we manage it.
I mean, do you want to meet with FCAR beforehand?
Thought we had that discussion once already, didn't we? And we should go back and look at what we said
Yeah.
and follow that through.
Yeah. I think it may be worthwhile meeting with them just to move them along a little bit, so we can start
Encourage them.
putting into a framework.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
We all good, David?
Good, David, thank you very much.
Thanks for calling in.
It's a little bit.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
He brings a very good point.
Okay. Okay, do we have any public comment? Bob?
No.
Hey, sure. Last time this year? Okay.
Sure.
Right, very good. Thank you. Anybody else have any comment for the public? No? Okay, we have a schedule, January 7th next year. Then the 23rd, budget meeting on January 7th, again. Any other business? Okay, with that, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn and wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Enjoy your families. Thank you. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.